Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs and is NATO running out of ammo and weapons for Ukraine? Now, the narrative is basically that the NATO stocks of armament and ammunition is running low and they don't have anything more to send to Ukraine. And basically that NATO is not in a situation to continue this war or to support Ukraine. Well, I can talk about many stuff and so on about this, but I would like to talk about the issue that is mostly addressed, and that is the 155mm artillery and ammunition. Because at this stage, again, the narrative is that Russia is waging a war of attrition, and it has become an artillery battle between the two sides, and, well, the famous meat grinder, which I don't understand. Well, I do understand the meat grinder, the principle of meat grinder, but I don't see it. And unfortunately, I don't really believe in this current narrative of the meat grinder, but unless the Ukrainian commanders are very, very stupid. But I cannot see that anybody is that stupid. But let's go and talk about the 155mm ammunition. Let's start with that. The point here is that I recently read an article, just before Christmas, that South Africa has won a huge order for 155mm artillery rounds. Now, if you don't know that, South Africa had their own armament industry during the apartheid era. But after 1994, when we became a multicultural type of more democratic society and country, a lot of armaments were basically imported. But I worked in the armament industry. I actually worked on the 155mm round, not on the round itself, but mostly on the rocket-assisted add-on and then the base bleed. And as far as I understood at that stage, is the South African had an artillery piece, a towed one, called the G5, and a self-propelled version, a G6, and those were world-class artillery pieces. In fact, I know in Wikipedia and other sources, the ranges are a lot more like a standard American 155mm round, but according to my information at that stage, it was a lot, they could shoot a lot further with a standard round. I think a standard round at that stage was between 40 and 50 kilometers. But that's beside the point. It was a fairly accurate system, but we in South Africa had problems selling it because our political clout was not comparable to the Americans. And the Americans basically forced their own armament on our clients. But that's beside the point. The point here is basically that our South African version of the 155 artillery piece and ammunition were world-class and superior to a lot of other weapon systems. And as I spoke into a recent video as well, that the record at that stage was 64 kilometers for a 155 rocket-assisted round, and it was fired from a German PZ-H-2000 self-propelled artillery piece. And it was using South African ammunition. So at this stage, basically, the South African was bought over by Rheinmetall a couple of years back. And they have a 50-50, South African has a 50-50 partnership or ownership of the local arms industry. In any case, so this stimulated to have me have a closer look on what is really happening with the 155 ammunition. And I did some research on that, and I would like to present it now. Now, the narrative is that the Ukrainians were using about 6,000 rounds per day, and the Russians were using about 60,000 rounds per day. Now, these were enormous amounts of artillery pieces, and just the logistics behind it would have been enormous. So I never actually supported those numbers or figures, but that is how everybody liked to listen to a piece of news, grab it, and just go with it, like the typical Bush telegraph, etc., etc. And I don't believe that's the truth. If I think about the sum of 6,000 on the Ukrainian side, I would have imagined those were the 155 rounds, the Soviet Union was 152, the 122, the 106 millimeter, and the 120 mortar. So that would have made a lot more sense. Well, there is again American anonymous source in the military that says that Ukraine is now using between 4,000 and 7,000 rounds per day, and the Russians are firing approximately 20,000 rounds per day. Now, that sounds a lot more credible. In any case, so if you think about this, there's actually, I would say there's a website that accumulates all the information, or all the armament and financial support and military support and armaments and everything basically that is given by the West to Ukraine. And it's called Ukraine Support Tracker, and I will leave you the link in the description. It is basically a spreadsheet, very, very informative. You can select any piece of equipment that you want. You want to see how many Caesars were provided by France. You can do that by selecting certain drop boxes. It's a quite nice piece of information. In any case, from a artillery point of view, from the spreadsheet, which I put on a fairly high accuracy or credibility to this source, there's no reason for them to lie about it, because that's not the point of this website. It's more a point of a scientific research data point, which is not subject to the propaganda type of narrative. In any case, according to that spreadsheet, there have been about 155 military artillery pieces donated or sold or given to Ukraine by the NATO forces. And this includes the towed versions as well as the self-propelled versions. So 265 units is a fair amount of artillery that was provided to Ukraine. Now, I know also some of them have been destroyed. Some of them have been captured. Some of them have maintenance problems and needed repair. So I don't believe everyone is in action at this stage on the front. And also, not every artillery piece is fired each day. But if you sort of take the figure of 4,000 to 7,000 that is provided by the US anonymous source, and you will find on the lower end 4,000 rounds per day. That's about 15 rounds per unit. And if you want to insist on the 7,000 per day, then you're going to have about 26 artillery rounds per day. And that sounds a lot more reasonable in terms of usage. And but that's only, yeah, well, all the NATO ones are 155, so it's not that they can use the artillery rounds on the Soviet era period. We also know that the Soviet Ukraine was a large storage area of Soviet weaponry and ammunition in that Soviet era, and also had a fairly large military-industrial complex. So the initial stocks that was kept by the Ukrainians before the SMO should have been significant, but we don't know really what's happening. For the simple reason is that Ukraine has been corrupt and for a long time, and they have probably was one of the main suppliers of illegal arms sales in the world, because they had these huge stocks and they were corrupt. So it's a little bit difficult to really determine what they had and what they didn't have, and whether all these things are true, but I believe it's really true, in spite of classifying it as Western propaganda. Times were very bad in the fall of the Soviet Union, so money was scarce, oligarchs and criminal elements flourished, and yeah, why not? Why not sell illegal arms? But that's another point for somebody else to discuss. In any case, so in the same spreadsheet, you can precisely see how many 155 artillery rounds were provided to Ukraine and by whom. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to classify general rounds versus the Excalibur. You can look at the spreadsheet. Sometimes if there's a 500 unit or 1,000 unit, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, when there were some press conferences held by the Americans and they announced a new package, and they usually told you how many normal rounds they would provide and how many of the precision Excalibur rounds they would supply. And it's usually around 500 and 1,000 precision instrument, and the bulk would have been normal ones. In any case, the narrative again says that America has supplied more than 1 million rounds to Ukraine. And again, that is false, if I believe, and I have much more credibility in this type of information than a normal reporter that just repeats somebody anonymous source. In any case, so America has delivered about 714,000 rounds up to 20 November. This spreadsheet only goes up to the 20th November. And then other countries of NATO has supplied more or less 50,000 artillery rounds. So that brings you about to 765,000 rounds. Doesn't even get to the military million mark. But what is more interesting, and that was instigated why I actually started this video, is that I had the Denel, Breimetal Denel, because I was involved in that stimulated the idea. And then I looked up and found a report actually about, this is a financial market report, and they predicted basically what is the world turnover, the market of 155 millimeter rounds in the world. And they use that information to provide data for investments and stuff like that. So basically, each year there is a market for 155 millimeter rounds. Each year, a lot of people, countries are actually buying the ammunition. So it's not you manufacture today and then you wait 5 years and you manufacture another batch and so. No. This is a continuous production type of environment. And in any case, the projected, for 2021 was $3.4 billion. And it was projected that for 2022, it would have been 4.3 billion. This was compiled before the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. And so the numbers are not really totally accurately, but it tells you that there is a market for these things, a yearly market, a yearly turnover. This is an industry that is ongoing. And I once read somewhere, I can't remember where, that a normal artillery round is supposed to cost about $3,000 each. Now, if you divided the 3,000 into the numbers, then you get that yearly there are about 1.4 million 155 millimeter rounds produced, manufactured. 1.4. So that's about double what has currently been used in Ukraine by the Ukrainian forces for the last 11 months. So I'm not totally sure, when they say we're going to produce 12,000 extra rounds per month and so on, or 30 rounds, 1,000, that's not going to be enough. Ukrainians are using it up and they're going to shoot it up in within 2 days to a week, and then they're out of ammo. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that well because they still have the Soviet artillery. They still have the new 155 millimeters, and they still have their 106s and the 122s. They still have a lot of other artillery pieces as well. So it's not that the Ukrainians are absolute empty or running on an empty tank. No, they are not. But in any case, so looking again at the data that was provided, it's about 60% of the ammunition that is produced is dump artillery. That means normal rounds. And 40% is now being manufactured of precision ammunition, like the Excalibur. So there's a fairly large portion of moving away from dump ammunition to artillery, to precision type of artillery. In any case, I thought that would be very interesting. Well, the United States has announced that they will triple their production of this type of ammunition. And the US is currently producing about 14,000 shells each month. And they want to increase it to 20,000 by the spring and about 40,000 by 2025. Well, that's what the Americans want to produce. I'm not totally sure about these numbers. I think they are fairly low. I mean, America is one of the biggest producers of military components, isn't it? The military industrial complex is supposed to be huge in America. So, you know, compared to European countries and comparing to China and Taiwan or any other countries, they are the big boys. And not even Russia can keep up with their spending. And okay, China is a little bit different. But America is a big boy. And think about it is your core type of armament, then surely the Americans have millions and millions of these rounds stored away. And they should be able to produce a lot more per day, per month. But in any case, so we'll leave it at for that stage. It's a little bit of unknown information. And I think we will probably never know really what's going on. But the Americans also showed an intent to buy about 100,000 rounds from South Korea. Now, buying 100,000 rounds from South Korea is also a significant number. So South Korea is also a fairly large manufacturer. Then there was Germany. Germany wanted to invest in a factory in Poland, who produces 155 and 152, the Soviet era rounds. So basically, they are ramping up production in Europe as well. Then there was German had developed some, call it precision ammunition, but it doesn't work in the same way. It is, they called it the smart ammunition. It was basically a parachuted, fired, open a parachute, and then the round will recognize its target and then basically will adjust its flight until it reaches that target. It's not like a GPS guided Excalibur that basically positions itself as it flies. In any case, the Germans produced about 12,000 of these rounds, but they thought they would never be used, and then they stopped production. And they kept about 9,000 of these rounds, and then they exported about 3,000 of these rounds to Australia, Greece, and Switzerland. So they do have some rounds lying around. They never thought they're going to use it, so might as well give it to Ukraine and see what they will be doing with that. But they're going to ramp up production again, or they're going to try to ramp up production. And unfortunately, it's going to take 5 years, they say, in order to set up the production lines again. I don't believe 5 years. You can produce these things maximum 1 year, but possibly if you really are committed, you can do it in maybe 6 months. Just have to source out. All the drawings are done. All the material is specified. You know, get a machine shop and, hey, make me 1,000 of these units. Put a CNC machine on there, and there you go. In any case. Well, apparently it's going to cost about 100 million euros, not a small money. And they are planning to manufacture about 10,000 of these units, and each unit costs about, this is just for you to say, 81,000 euros. Again, war is very expensive. So now we come to my favorite subject, and that is South Africa. And in South Africa, we have the Rheinmetall Denel Munition Group, as I've specified, and they recently actually received 3 orders. 2 were about in July, and now we got this one in December, but they don't tell us who the client is. But apparently it's a 5-year framework contract, which I believe is not a fixed amount that has to be delivered, but they will manufacture on demand, basically, how much, whatever they need, South Africa will basically produce. Well, this order is not only for a normal artillery round, it is the whole tutti. It is the fuses, the round, the high explosives, and I don't know what other smoke and all the other stuff that goes with it, the illumination, and the M92 modular charges. Now, South Africa's charges are very, very powerful. And you can, depending on the pressure that the cannon breech can handle, you can pump up and use more and more of these modular charges to build up your charge and then naturally your driving force. And based on that, the African versions can handle that, but they were not NATO orientated, so they're not NATO compatible, although they are 155s. In any case, well, I told you that the record was at that stage 64 kilometers fired by a German Panzer 2000. And I know Americans don't fire that far, even if they claim from a theoretical point of view. But it's not confirmed. I think the furthest the Americans fired was 36 kilometers with an Excalibur. And that was done in Iraq and so on. In any case, so South Africa again break the record. And they fired a rocket-assisted 155mm round to a distance of 76 kilometers. 76 kilometers. Unfortunately, it was a non-NATO artillery piece, probably the South African version, which had a 40-52 caliber length barrel and a 25-liter propellant charge chamber. So as you can see, the South African version has a large charge chamber, and that is where you get the power from. And they're already, Denel is already working on improving these artillery technologies, and especially probably the rocket-assisted version. And if they get it right and so on, they are aiming to boost the maximum range to 155 kilometers. Have you ever thought about this? A 155 artillery shell traveling 155 kilometers. You don't even need a UIV. You don't even need a cruise missile. You don't even need a flippin' kamikaze, whatever called drone. That's a huge achievement. And in that sense, I'm very proud of the South African engineers that will achieve that point. And unfortunately, Russia has to soup up its game, because at the end of the day, it's attrition warfare. With artillery, it's not going to work anymore. They're going to lose that battle, because unless they can take out these long-range artillery pieces, which are, in any case, at this stage, superior to the Russian versions, if they can be delivered more than enough to them. And, well, we will see what's happening there. So just for the sakes, I thought I'll have a look at the companies that produce it in the world. The first one is in the UK, BAE Systems. Then are 2 companies in Israel, Elbit Systems and Israel Aerospace Industries. The US has about 3, General Dynamics, Northrop, and Raytheon. In Slovakia, we have MSM Group. In Norway, we have the Nammo Group. Well, in that is KNDS. Oh, Netherlands. Yeah. KMV and Next Defense Systems of the Netherlands. Then there's the Rheinmetall of Germany. The RUAG Group in Switzerland. And the ST Engineering in Singapore. And Thales Group in France. Munition India in India. And Leonardo SPA in Italy. And then the Pongshan Corporation in South Korea. Now, these are all more or less NATO-friendly countries. And I'm sure that if they get a contract, they will provide enough ammunition to the US to be resold and redelivered to Ukraine. So, looking at these basic facts, and they are fairly easy available. Like I said many times ago, you can just Google a little bit, do a little bit of effort, and then you can find out that what is propaganda, what is fake news, and what is the true circumstances. And I cannot agree basically with a narrative. Either it's pro-Russians or pro-Western. But then, hold on, there is more. So I looked at the artillery pieces as well. And we again, general narrative, the Americans do not have enough weapons to send Ukraine, etc. and etc. Therefore, Ukraine is going to lose against Russia, and so forth and so forth. And there's a problem with that narrative. The question is, in the last 8 years, we have been told that NATO, and especially the UK and US, trained Ukrainian soldiers to NATO standards and NATO equipment and NATO strategies and etc. and etc. etc. And they even took it out on the Donbass region by bombarding them as well. So they had some practice, if you want to call it. But suddenly, there are no weapons. There are no NATO weapons in Ukraine. I don't understand that. Suddenly, the Ukrainians are dumb commanders. They don't know what they're doing. They're sending their people into the meat grinder and God knows what. In any case, so unfortunately, this story still remains a mystery. And then on the other side is that Americans, poked the bear, the Russian bear, and they poked it. And they should have realized that the bear is going to wake up and start swiping at his enemy, and that's Ukraine. So why did the Americans not prepare for this type of war? They should have known it. That should have been Plan B. I know Plan A would have been the financial collapse in the economy and so on, but Plan B should have been that they had to prepare military-wise. And this still baffles me. Where is the American weapons? And I believe there's a lot of things that we don't really know about. So again, we are looking at artillery. Forget about the rest of the weapons. I'm not only talking about artillery and ammunition. So, I said that NATO delivered more or less 265 155 artillery pieces, which is no small quantities. It's a significant quantities, given that there are other calibers also available. In any case, so the biggest one was actually the M777 that was provided by America and some European countries. And then there was the M109, which is actually a self-propelled version that was given to Ukraine. The Americans gave about, 142 M777s to Ukraine. And two countries gave, Canada gave 6 and somebody gave 4. So it's 10 about that they provide M777s. And then about 3 countries gave, Poland, Norway, Belgium, and UK gave a total of 86 M109 to Ukraine. And like I said, this is a self-driven, self-propelled artillery piece. In any case, I will just get to that. But most of them have more or less the same barrel length. I think the M777 is a 5.8 meters and the M109 as well. But there's a curiosity which bothers me actually. And that is that the M777, firstly, is a British designed and manufactured artillery piece. But a lot of components are actually manufactured in America itself. Somehow, the Americans either confiscated the design or convinced the UK to produce a artillery piece in America. But that's beside the point. The M777 and the M109 basically have sort of typical same capabilities. Standard rounds about 22.4 kilometers. Rocket assisted or base bleeds about 30 kilometers. And some of the longer barrels one would be about 40 kilometers. That would be typical for the Excalibur. So it's not that they are differing much and so on. In any case, what is interesting about this is that the M777 was introduced into the American Army to replace the M198, which was an American version. And I will get to that now. But just for the sakes, according to the data, the Americans have 999 M777 still available. So they have 1,000 of these artillery pieces still in stock somewhere, in storage. And that's a huge amount. So if they want, they can supply Ukraine with another 100 of them, and it won't really matter. They can start producing more artillery pieces. And if you notice the current reports of the Russians, they are not destroying that many artillery pieces on a daily basis. It makes an effort to locate these artillery pieces and to destroy them. So the M777 is working as it's supposed to be doing. But in any case, so we get back to the M198. That's the one that the M777 replaced. And this was, I think these things were manufactured in while it entered service in 1979. So it's not really that old, and artillery pieces don't get that old quickly, unless you were under design. But in any case, they were replaced in the American and the Australian Army by the M777. But what's more important, there is about 1,600 of these artillery pieces manufactured. 1,600. And if the Wikipedia or the page tells you now which country has currently of these artillery pieces, 198. And if you add them all together, then you get about 956 units are currently being used by other countries. And that leaves approximately 650 of these artillery pieces somewhere in some storage in American depots. And what have we seen during this whole conflict? NATO sells all their old weapons to Ukraine. Firstly, all the old weapons, scrapyard, car boot sale. So why was none of these M198s delivered to Ukraine? There's supposed to be 650 of them available. So let's say half of them are off. 20% of them are out of action or stripped for spare parts. That still leaves about 500 of these units, and they have the same performance like the M777. It's not that they shoot the same distance. In fact, it has actually a longer barrel. That's a 6-meter long barrel. But if you look at the data, they have more or less the same distance. 25 kilometers, normal around 40 kilometers if they go for the Excalibur. And they have been used by and they are not made of titanium. And they don't suffer the same problem. Maybe they suffer some other problem. So, there's 500 possible 155 artillery pieces that still can be delivered by the USA. Not even talking about all the other countries that have these weapons that can be swapped out for an M777. So is America running out of artillery pieces? No ways, no ways. Any case, so we move on. And now we move on to the M109, this self-propelled howitzer. And it's an American version. And like I said, a couple of NATO countries, European countries, provided Ukraine with about 86 of them. 86 self-propelled 155 artillery pieces. That's again, not a small number. Not if you use it correctly. But does anybody ever talk about this? No. They just spew the standard narrative, living in a bubble type of pro-Russian commentators. And then, just for the sakes, again, they have the same more or less capability than the M777 in terms of distance. And America has 514 of these units in active service, 514, and they have 850 in storage. Meaning 850 of these units in storage. They haven't even used them. And that's a significant amount of hardware. Well, when I ask the question is, why haven't they given it to Ukraine? Well, the Americans always say they assess the needs of the Ukrainians, and they only provide defensive armaments. They don't want to antagonize Russia, and they don't want to get involved in the World War III. But some other time, they are slowly giving out Patriots and stuff like that, and, well, things are changing. Any case, what I can say, summing up, things are not what they seem to be. There's a lot of information that is not told to you as the viewer by the Western narratives, commentators, as well as by the pro-Russian commentators. There's a lot behind the scenes that one doesn't even really know. And I've only addressed the artillery pieces. I wanted to talk about air defenses and then especially on the focus on the Stinger, which I will probably make another video of. And, you know, the Patriot systems and stuff like that, there's a lot of stuff we don't really know. So if anybody is a military weapon expert or fanatic, I am not, and leave some comments on there. Tell us your knowledge. In any case, that's the story for today. Subscribe to the channel. If you like what you heard, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends. Spread the word. Press the bell button to be notified. And until next time, cheers.